Good evening, everyone. My name is Rochelle Berdan. I use they, them pronouns. I currently serve as your co-director of Filipino Culture Night, and I'm running to be your next executive chairperson for the upcoming year. I choose to move through the world with vulnerability, intentionality, and bravery. Before accepting my nomination, I deeply reflected on whether I wanted to run, and I am certain that I want to continue serving the people who make Pa'a what it is, a space to flourish. I'm aware that I'm not perfect, but I am a work in progress. Pa'a has always been a work in progress in exploring Filipino and Filipino-American identity and what our members need from this space. I'm not planning for a fixed end goal, but an ongoing one that is adaptable, grounded in direction, and rooted in reflection and action. I love Pa'a, and that is why I critique it for the betterment of our people. This past year, Cabinet had worked towards more political engagement. However, we fell short. This impacts our general members because they shouldn't have to wait for opportunities to come to them when we have the agency to create it with them. By doing so, our members can feel connected, confident, and have a variety of ways to grow in their voice and leadership. We should actively create space for them to explore their voice, identities, the issues in the Philippines, and how that impacts us as a cultural organization and connects to our world today. I plan to meet members where they are at by providing opportunities that further their academics, challenge their leadership, and encourage involvement through volunteering, such as community gardens, collaborations with community engagement and labor center, and general meetings that encourage them to engage in conversations about identity. So our members are not just attending, but building confidence, leadership skills, and purpose within and beyond Pa'a. Cabinet has been disconnected from our general members. Our members strive to express their voices, but can feel limited, leading them to feel unheard and less engaged to fully show up in this space. Our meetings can improve by offering opportunities to explore identity, culture, and the world around us, while also building skills in self-advocacy, confidence, and cultural humility. To improve this, I plan to implement weekly, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound goals related to academics, culture, or professionalism that guide the focus of Cabinet. This would keep us accountable and intentional so that every general meeting is relevant, intentional, and clearly beneficial to our members. We don't have to make big sacrifices that risk our well-being to serve our general body. We need to make intentional choices grounded in connection. When we plan through our constitutional values of encouragement of political struggle, academic excellence, and cultural awareness while celebrating cultural diversity, we create a direction that offers members opportunities to reflect, build connection, and grow through agency so that every member leaves Pa'a feeling more confident, connected, and grounded in their identity. Serbisyo sa tao, service to the people always, and maraming salamat for your time.
I motion to move into questions. Your first question is from the current executive chairperson. Rochelle, in your speech, you referenced that you want to expand on political engagement towards our general members. This has always been a topic of conversation, but something that has not been touched upon again until this past year with you and Berdan as your senior chairs. How do you plan on incorporating it within general meetings, more consistently, but also outside of general meetings?
Thank you for your question. I think something that Nolan and I have spearheaded were those workshops. I think something that can be implemented throughout general meetings is offering a space of cultural awareness where our members can learn more about political issues, political engagement, self-advocacy. They're important topics that impact Filipino and Filipino Americans. I think another beautiful thing about that is that it doesn't have to stay within our general meetings. Something that I've thought of a lot recently was how we can collaborate with the resources we have on campus that do practice those same things. Sometimes we may not know the best approach to those things, so sometimes we need to ask for those other people who are more well-informed about that. I've seen the community Labor Center do so much work that's not just on campus, but also off campus, and how they continuously interact with the community within Merced and the Central Valley. I've also heard so many different workshops and opportunities that the Community Engagement Center offers to multiple students, despite majors, despite their year, and I think that is something we can learn from and also incorporate as well.
Hello, Rochelle. Amazing job. So, how do you want to bring the PAA moment to someone joining our organization?
To clarify, for PAA moment, do you mean like what my PAA moment was?
Like, so what is your PAA moment, and how do you want someone to have their PAA moment? Yeah.
I think for me, my PAA moment was with PCN. PCN was a very ambitious thing because we chose to do it in Merced Theater. While it was a high goal, we also learned how to make it realistic and a lot more grounded, so that way it was achieving what we envisioned, but also realistic in the way that we were making plans and the way that we delegated things. In terms of delegation, I think PCN taught me so much about the areas of growth that I needed, which were delegation, time management, and also finding a balance within capacity. And that is something that I want to bring not only to our cabinet members, but also our general body. I think our cabinet members can learn so much more about delegation and taking really big visions and breaking that down into smaller, more doable plans. Rather than going for something that's big and great, break it down to smaller, more manageable steps will keep us heading towards that vision, and also making sure that that vision is still executed in a very creative manner. For general members, what I would love to provide for them is that collaboration aspect. I think a really beautiful thing about being e-board, and from what I've heard from current e-board, is it is what you make of it. And so while a lot of the leadership opportunities have been more catered to the interns who choose to shadow us, I think also something that we can do is reaching out to the new members and asking if they would like to facilitate a meeting, if they would like to facilitate a workshop, if they would like to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. If they would like to engage in those things. I think also it's something that I had in mind was after general meetings is including a feedback form of something they would like to see in the next general meeting, whether that's related to academic, professional, or cultural aspects. I think that's something that cabinet can reflect back on during our cabinet meetings, so that way it's reflective of what the general body asks of.
Hi, Rochelle. How will you approach a situation where there are talks of inappropriate behaviors within the club, either in person or online? Think of Fizz.
Sorry, could you repeat your question one more time?
How will you approach a situation where there are talks of inappropriate behaviors within the club, either talks happening in person or online?
I think first and foremost, it's important to have that conversation with cabinet members so that we are all on the same page about how we should be addressing things. There's a time and place for when things should be said and how we should say it. I think depending on what that context is, sometimes just a simple announcement during general body meetings, a reminder of what we stand for, the values that we hold as a club, and making sure that that is upheld in our general body meetings too. I think if it was a situation that was more so related online, so like things spreading around or rumors, not everything needs to be engaged with. Sometimes doing nothing about something that's really not really within our control is better than trying to actively catch something that's just going to continue spreading. And so more of that focus should be about how we protect the integrity of our club in a more internal aspect, and protecting our general body's like well-being in that manner.
How will you handle the emotional weight of representing a culture you cannot speak for everyone?
Could you repeat your question?
will you handle the emotional weight of representing a culture when you cannot speak for everyone?
I think it's important for me personally to understand my own capacity. Everyone comes from different walks of life, myself included, and while I may not be able to speak for everyone, it's important that I keep an open mind in how I stay aware, how we stay engaged as prospective e-board members and cabinet as a whole. I think the best thing to do is always keep an open mind and move with respect and move with openness. Sorry, could you repeat your question one more time?
How will you handle the emotional weight of representing a culture when you cannot speak for everyone?
I think it does just go back to capacity and understanding where there are some places and some people that I can't necessarily speak for and I can't reach. But for those that I can, it's important to stay grounded in who those members are and making a space for the people that I can't. Making space for the people who I may not necessarily connect with on a personal level, but making that space to learn from them.
As the face of the organization, the cabinet will always turn to you whenever they need support or they need help. So how do you plan on alleviating burnout within cabinet throughout the year?
Burnout is something that's so common, whether you're in a club, an organization, or just being a student. Mental health is something that's so dear to me that I am always actively working towards taking care of. And I think first and foremost, I'm a firm believer in how you take care of yourself is also what you embody for other people. Something that I would love to do, but would love to flesh out more if given the chance to be elected into the position, is to plan out ways that we can incorporate in cabinet meetings where we can take maybe the last 15 minutes, 10 minutes to use it as decompressing time. Something as simple as journaling, something as simple as drawing, listening to music, something that's tangible is something that I would love to explore within our cabinet. I think something that I would love to continue that eBoard has done a very good job at is checking in with different positions within cabinet, relating back to those SMART goals that are reflecting on what is it that they're doing right now that's going well, and what is something that they may be struggling with or something that they need a little bit more support with, and coming up with a solution that fits their needs and their capacity.
Good stuff, Bill. One question. You mentioned that you had the skill sets and were more into the Vice Exec. So why did you go with these trips?
Hi, Bill. Can you please repeat your question?
Basically, why did you run for exec and not Vice Exec?
Vice Exec is something that I feel that my skills are suited for. And while I have the skill set for both positions, I knew that Vice Exec would give me the comfort in growing, but I knew that Exec would give me the challenge to grow. And I know that there are some things that I do struggle with, and while that is always something that I will be keeping in mind and how I challenge myself, I think that Exec will give me that opportunity to proactively practice the ways that I would like to keep myself accountable.
Hello, Rochelle. Amazing speech. My question for you is, what would you take away from the previous executive, and how will you implement the takeaway from Julie?
I'm not gonna cry.
I want you one more time.
Julie does a really wonderful job in actively trying to be more personable with our current cabinet, but also our general members. I think that goes back to my why and why I want to run for exec, and also how I want to shape my own values into this position. And it always goes back to intentionality. When your intentions are clear, your direction is clear. And that is something that I always want to continue practicing, not just on my own, but also encourage prospective e-board members to do with me, because this is a teamwork. We're growing on our own, but we're also growing together, and that in turn trickles down to cabinet. And as that trickles down to cabinet, that also is trickled down to the rest of the general body. So that's what I would say for that question.
In past years, some cabinet members have failed to fulfill their responsibilities without facing consequences. How will you ensure that cabinet members are held accountable for their duties and prevent situations that could negatively impact both the cabinet and the organization as a whole?
Boundaries and accountability are skills that I think are really fundamental in any position, whether that's e-board or cabinet. I think going back to the goals that we set and the goals that we reflect back on will keep us accountable in terms of what we are actively doing in those moments and what is something that we're missing. Our actions do have consequences, and the actions that we are actively participating in create that it gives us that space to reflect on what our actions, how our actions are impacting our general members. Something that I believe is really helpful is having those check-ins. It's a good space to engage in that conversation about what they're doing right now and what they're struggling in. I think also accountability, we don't always, as you mentioned with e-board, you don't always want to be hand-holding, but there's a time and place where guidance can only take you so far, and sometimes you do have to have those hard conversations. And that's not a moment of like critiquing who you are as a person, but critiquing and giving you that opportunity to reflect on who you are as a leader and how you can grow from that.
So, next question, should all be more or less political?
I love this question. Sorry, let me lock in real quick. Inherently speaking, being Filipino American, our identities are inherently political. We are a cultural organization. Our languages, our history, our culture is basically being radical. We should always be actively conscious about the identities we hold, not just as Filipinos, but also who our general members are and who our cabinet members are, because they do come from different walks of life. Not everyone is a Filipino. Not everyone is a Filipino American. So we do need to be conscious of who we are and how we are creating a space that is reflective of the people who come into our club, the people who choose to stay in our club, and how we can provide them the space to feel represented and also learn more about who they are in the sense of our community. Yeah.
I have a two-part question for you. You have a mix of returning cabinet and you have more new cabinet members in your prospective term. So how do you plan on enchanting and inspiring new cabinet to keep excelling in their goals? But how do you also keep inspiring returning cabinet in a role that may feel more redundant, in a role that may feel more repetitive to them? How do you plan on challenging their roles as well so that you can facilitate their growth?
I think for the first part of your question and keeping them enchanted is that it always goes back to the why. Everyone comes in with their own individual why and their reason for choosing to run for the position and the reason why they got elected into their position. Really grounding them in their why is something that will always keep them pushing. I think in terms of challenging them, it's also about what is something that they're good at and reminding them of those strengths, but also encouraging them through their areas of growth.
I motion for more time.
And giving them those opportunities to actively practice in those areas of growth that will challenge them, but also bring such wonderful insight, lessons to learn, and also how they can grow better as leaders. I'm low-key having a hard time remembering your other question. Could you please repeat it?
And then how will you keep challenging and facilitating growth for your returning cabinet members in a role that feels repetitive?
Could you rephrase it?
For returning cabinet members, burnout is more likely to happen at the beginning of their term, where they might feel like they don't want to attend general meetings, or they don't want to attend the things that feels like more of a job than their passion. So how do you keep facilitating their growth and keeping them on their toes, so to say, when approaching their role in cabinet?
I'm going to be completely honest. I don't have the most fleshed out answer right now, and I think that's something that I could reflect on. I would love to, again, go back to reminding them of their why. What that looks like, I'm not entirely the most certain of giving you an answer right now, but I think that's something that I could reflect on.
Can you think of a time where you struggled or faced a barrier, and can you describe how you overcame that and how that can empower you to be a better executive chairperson?
Does it have to be within bar, or can it be anywhere else?
Anywhere leadership related.
I think something that I can think of was the first time I ever took a leadership role. And that was when I was freshly in high school, a junior, and I was starting to community organize for the first time. I took up a very big role of speaking at a school board meeting and handling all of the I volunteered myself as a person to answer all the questions that would come from these school board members. I didn't necessarily prep myself too much because I thought that I could quote unquote handle it. When I was in that space, I realized I was extremely overwhelmed. I didn't know how to fully ground myself, and I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. So a lot of the time, my answers to them became a lot more snappier than they needed to be. And I look back at that and I reflect on that a lot because I was young. But something that I have learned from that is learning what that capacity looks like for me and how I can continue to ground myself when things do get overwhelming. What was the other part of your question?
How it can empower you to be a better executive chairperson.
I think it can empower me by reminding me of what my capacity is. I may not have the most capacity for everything, but that doesn't mean that I can't find other ways to show up within that capacity. And I repeat that a lot because it is true. I may not be able to be fully physically present for everything, but I think also being honest, being transparent, and finding ways that fit within my capacity will also give me that opportunity to still lead while not burning myself out and not overcommitting myself. Yeah.
Hello, Rochelle. Sorry, it's me again. I wanted to ask you the question, how would you help cabinet retain and build better relationships between them?
I'm going to try my best to answer this, but I think something that CAB can do to retain our members is... between CAB. Wait, sorry, can you repeat your question?
How would you help cabinet retain and build better relationships?
Between each other.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. I think something that I would love to implement are those CAB dates that we continuously had this cabinet year. I think they are great opportunities to get to know people you may not be the most familiar with, and also strengthen the relationships you do have with these people.
Wait.
That's good.